He didn't ask for fame. He didn't fight for money. He didn't even ask to be in the spotlight. All Chris Pérez wanted was to keep her memory alive. But every time he tried to honor Selena, through stories, tributes, even a quiet book, the response wasn't support. It was silence, or worse, lawsuits. Selena's family built a brand. They protected it, controlled it, marketed it to the world. But the man who loved her most, the man who married her, held her, lost her, they pushed him out. From books, from biopics, from series, Chris Pérez was treated not like a husband, but like a footnote. And now, decades later, fans are asking the one question the Quintanilla family never seems to answer. Why was Chris never allowed to be part of Selena's legacy? Because the love never faded, but somehow, they still erased him. When Selena Quintanilla was taken from this world in 1995, the music stopped. But for one man, everything else stopped too. Chris Pérez wasn't just a bandmate. He wasn't just part of the team. He was her husband, her partner, the person who knew her outside of the spotlight, after the concerts ended and the crowd faded. And when she died, he lost everything. Chris was only 25, a newlywed, a rising musician, and now a widower. The world mourned Selena as a star, but Chris mourned her as a soulmate. He didn't tour his grief. He didn't sit down for talk shows. He didn't sign deals or demand attention. In fact, for a long time, he said almost nothing. He moved into silence. For years, fans heard very little from him. And when he did speak, it was soft, gentle, grateful, never angry, never attention-seeking. Because Chris didn't want to be famous for his pain. He wanted to keep Selena's memory his way, quiet, true, and personal. He stayed out of the lawsuits, out of the brand negotiations, out of the estate decisions. He let her family take the lead, because maybe he thought they'd include him. Maybe he believed that love was enough to earn him a place in her legacy. But as time passed, something became clear. Selena's image was becoming a business. And Chris? He was no longer part of it. He wasn't invited to key interviews. He wasn't consulted on tribute projects. He wasn't acknowledged in ways that made sense. Not for someone who shared a marriage, a home, and plans for a lifetime. Still, he stayed respectful. He kept posting tributes, old photos, song lyrics, anniversary reflections. But behind every word was silence. Not his silence. The family that once called him son-in-law no longer called him anything at all. In 2012, Chris Pérez did something bold. After nearly 2 decades of silence, he released a book. Not a tell-all, not a scandal sheet, not a money grab, a love letter to Selena with love. It wasn't flashy. It didn't try to rewrite history. It didn't attack the Quintanillas. It simply told his story, his version of life with Selena. From their secret courtship, to their elopement, to the quiet life they shared when the spotlight dimmed. Fans were stunned by its honesty. He wrote about their fights, their dreams, their insecurities, the night she died, and the days that followed, where the pain was so deep he couldn't breathe. Writing this was like bleeding through a pen, Chris said in an interview. The book soared to bestseller lists, because for the first time, people weren't reading about Selena the icon. They were seeing Selena the wife, the friend, the dreamer, the real woman behind the music. And Chris? He wasn't trying to profit off her. He was trying to speak after years of being told not to. But the response from the Quintanilla family? It wasn't support. It was outrage. Abraham Quintanilla publicly slammed the book, calling it inappropriate, unapproved, and distasteful. He didn't ask us. He had no right to do that, Abraham said in interviews. The implication was clear. Even after all these years, Chris still needed permission. Permission to speak. Permission to remember. Permission to grieve. But how do you ask for permission to miss your wife? Fans were furious. The book was respectful. It was emotional. It was healing. And yet, Selena's own family treated it like a threat. Legal action was discussed. Public statements were made. It wasn't just rejection. It was erasure. Chris had given the world a gift, his truth, his heartbreak, his memories. And the response? You're not allowed. But the truth is, no one has the right to control someone else's grief. Chris didn't write that book for fame. He wrote it to tell his side. The side that had been missing from every biopic, every documentary, every tribute. He wrote it because someone had to remember Selena as a human being, not just a brand. And still, they shut him out. After the success of To Selena with Love, Chris Pérez began exploring something deeper. Fans wanted more. They wanted to see the story come to life, not just through estate-approved films and polished tributes, but through his eyes, the eyes of the man who loved her. And so, he started developing a limited series, a television adaptation based on his memoir. It wasn't a cash grab. It wasn't sensational. The plan was simple. Bring his love story with Selena to screen with honesty, heart, and respect. But before a single scene could be filmed, everything fell apart. The Quintanilla family filed a lawsuit. According to Abraham, Chris had signed away his rights to anything involving Selena's image when she passed. The lawsuit argued that even though the memories were his, the permission to share them belonged to the estate. Think about that. The man who married her, who held her hand through life's biggest storms, who sat in shock and grief the day she was taken away, was now being told, "You don't own your story." Chris was devastated, but he didn't lash out. He made a single, quiet statement. "All I want to do is honor her memory. That's all I've ever wanted." Fans rallied behind him. Social media erupted. How can a husband be sued for sharing his truth? He doesn't need permission to tell us how he loved her. But the lawsuit didn't go away. The project stalled. The series was shelved. And once again, Chris was pushed aside. It wasn't the first time. It wouldn't be the last. Because as the world watched Selena's legacy grow, from tribute concerts to murals, from a Netflix series to a MAC cosmetics line, Chris's name was rarely mentioned, not because he didn't care, but because someone else had decided he didn't belong. The deeper tragedy of all this isn't just legal. It's emotional, because Chris Pérez never treated Selena like a product. He didn't trademark her smile. He didn't license her name to brands. He didn't turn her memory into merchandise. He kept her close. On anniversaries, he posted tributes. Simple. Sometimes just a flower. Sometimes a photo of the two of them with no caption at all. And fans knew exactly what it meant. Because grief doesn't need marketing. It doesn't come with a release date. It comes in waves. And Chris has been riding those waves in silence for nearly 30 years. Meanwhile, the estate expanded. There were makeup collections, apparel drops, pop vinyl figurines, branded birthday parties, new albums remixed with modern sounds, and most recently, a major Netflix series, produced without Chris's involvement. He wasn't interviewed. He wasn't consulted. In fact, he was barely referenced. They erased him, one fan wrote, but not from our hearts. And that's the core of this story. Selena was more than a brand. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, a wife. And somewhere along the line, the wife part was trimmed down, polished, and repackaged as a background detail. But fans haven't forgotten. They remember the wedding ring Chris still wears. The way he talks about her with tears in his eyes. After all these years. The book that read more like a confession than a memoir. The series that never got made. And the love that never tried to monetize pain. Chris never asked for control. He just wanted inclusion. And maybe that's what hurts the most. Because when you've shared someone's dreams, someone's bed, someone's last moments, and the world tells you that you have no right to speak their name, that's not just rejection. That's erasure. The truth is, the fans never needed Chris Pérez to be perfect. They didn't need a glossy documentary or a Netflix special to convince them that he belonged. They already knew. Because when someone grieves that quietly, that consistently, for that long, you can feel it. And for millions of Selena's fans, Chris Pérez has always been part of her story. Not because he asked to be, not because the estate said so, but because love like that doesn't lie. They saw it in the way he held her hand in old concert clips, in the tears he fought back during tribute performances, in the way he refused to exploit her memory, even when it would have been easier to stay famous. They remember the book, the lawsuit, the silence, and they've made it clear, you can sell a brand, but you can't erase a heart. Online, supporters continue to rally for him. When tribute shows air without him, fans speak up. When new Selena content drops, they ask, "Where's Chris?" He doesn't ask them to. He never asks for anything. But they defend him anyway because they know he never stopped defending her. In interviews, when asked about the ongoing divide, Chris never attacks. He says, "That's their family. I respect them, but I'll always love her. In my own way." It's quiet, mature, painful, because deep down fans can feel it. He's still grieving, not just Selena, but the version of her that only he knew. The version that sang off-key in the kitchen, that dreamed of kids and quiet days. That wasn't a brand, or a legacy, or an icon. Just Selena, just his wife. And maybe that's what makes his exclusion so cruel. Because love isn't something you sign away. It's not a trademark. It's not a contract. It's not something you ask for permission to remember. It's just there, in the posts, in the photos, in the words he still can't say out loud. Chris Pérez may not be part of the official Selena estate. He may not get producer credits or licensing deals, but he will always be something more powerful. He was the one she chose, the one she ran to, the one she married, and that can't be written out. Not by a contract, not by a lawsuit, not even by silence. Because no matter how much they try to push him out, Chris Pérez will always be part of Selena's story. For more of the latest news, check out this video.